Hello and welcome to our video. Today, we're going to take a look at the iconic Ford GT40 and its fascinating history. Among racers of all levels, the 24-hour race at Le Mans in France is held in high esteem. This competition, lasting a full day, takes place on a high-speed racetrack and is a true test for both drivers and machinery. For a long time, Le Mans was conquered exclusively by European automakers. However, 60 years ago, the Ford team achieved their first victory there. In the early 1960s, Ford cars performed well in American races. The Galaxy Coupes dominated the NASCAR Body Championship, and the Ford Shelby Cobra did well in the GT Championship. However, to reach the highest international level, more advanced models were needed, specially created sports prototypes. The head of Ford Motor Company, Henry Ford II, dreamed of great victories in endurance races, such as the 24-hour race at Le Mans. At that time, the kings of Le Mans were the Red Stallions of Ferrari. The Italian company was experiencing financial difficulties, and Enzo Ferrari put his creation up for sale. Ford decided to buy Ferrari and offered a fantastic sum of $18 million for that time. At first, the proud Italian agreed, especially since he was allowed to remain the honorary president of Ferrari. But at the last moment, Enzo Ferrari found out that he would not be able to make decisions without consulting Ford management and rudely showed the Americans the door to his office. Naturally, Ferrari's behavior angered Henry Ford II, and he decided to prove that he could succeed in racing on his own. To do this, he needed to defeat the Red Valiant at Le Mans. Thus, Ford launched a new racing program to create a sports prototype. At that time, mid-engine models dominated, but Ford had no experience in creating them. Therefore, the Americans hired a former Aston Martin engineer, John Wyer, and turned to the British company Lola, which already built cars using Ford components. The prototype for the new car was the Lola Mk6 GT. In 1963, a coupe and convertible were created jointly, called the GT40. The digital index indicated a height of 40 inches, or 1,300 millimeters in our measurement. The GT40 was based on a steel monocoque, to which fiberglass body panels were attached. This made it possible to make the car light, only 907 kilograms. The V8 engine, familiar from the Ford Mustang, with a volume of 4.7 liters, was reworked and its power was increased to 385 horsepower. It worked in pair with a 5-speed manual transmission. Of course, independent suspension and disc brakes were installed on all wheels. At that time, they were already the standard in the sports prototype segment. Throughout the year, the Ford GT40 underwent testing. During them, the coupe reached a speed of 315 kilometers per hour and accelerated to 100 kilometers per hour in 5 seconds, and to 160 in 9. In April 1964, several cars were brought to Le Mans for testing. This almost ended in tragedy. On the long straights, the nose of the car lacked downforce. One GT40 crashed, and another was seriously damaged. In an emergency, the cars were sent to Britain for redesign. The front design was changed, which solved the problem. However, it was not possible to completely get rid of childhood diseases. During the 24-hour race, the GT40s were very fast, but all of them dropped out due to technical problems. The victory was celebrated by a Ferrari crew. This was a real disaster. But Henry Ford II was not used to giving up. The design was still very raw. Then the Ford management decided to turn to their longtime partner, Carroll Shelby, the creator of the legendary Cobra Shelby Mustang. This Texan won the endurance races in 1959 behind the wheel of an Aston Martin and therefore knew a lot about them. He took on the task of reworking the model, and already in February 1965, the GT40 won its first victory at the Daytona Grand Prix. But Le Mans was not conquered again. The GT40 set a lap record in the race, but did not make it to the finish line and again lost to Ferrari. The new 1966 season was met by the Ford team in full force. The development of the convertible was abandoned, and they focused on the coupe. The reliability problems were solved, as evidenced by the first place in the Sebring race. For Le Mans, an updated GT40 MK2 was prepared. Shelby approached its creation in a purely American way. He installed a huge 7-liter V8 from the Ford Galaxy under the hood. The coupe became heavier by 150 kilograms, but this was compensated by serious power of 485 horsepower. On the straights, the Ford bolides easily reached speeds of 340 kilometers per hour. It was impossible to compete with such monsters. The GT40S took first, second, and third places. Moreover, they were so close that the winner had to be determined by photo finish. The triumphant crew was Chris Amon and Bruce McLaren. Then Ford won the Grand Prix in Daytona and Reims, which allowed the team to win the World Championship. Henry Ford II rejoiced. He proved to Enzo Ferrari that his car was better. To celebrate the victory, 7 road-going Ford GT40 MK3S were released. They featured a softer suspension, a 2-seater leather-trimmed interior, a trunk, a heater, and a radio. The engine's power, with a volume of 4.7 liters, was reduced to 335 horsepower, but the dynamics were still excellent. The car accelerated to 100 kilometers per hour in 5 3/10 of a second, and the maximum speed was 200.65 kilometers per hour. The car cost $18,500, which was cheaper than road-going Ferraris and Lamborghinis. The Americans rejoiced, but decided not to stop there. The following year, the improved GT40 MK4 was ready. It was designed without the participation of Detroit. A completely new chassis was created, and the body was also transformed. It became more streamlined, with better downforce due to the tapered rear spoiler. Aluminum alloys were widely used in the design, so the weight was reduced to 1,000 kilograms. The power of the 7-liter engine was increased to 500 horsepower, and the maximum speed reached 354 kilometers per hour. The MK4 repeated the success at Le Mans. This time, the American sports car stars Dan Gurney and A.J. Foyt won. It was difficult to compete with the unbeatable American cars on the track, and then the competitors went another way. The International Automobile Federation decided to limit the engine volume of sports prototypes to 5 liters. After that, Ford decided to stop developing the GT40 program as it was quite costly. The GT40S were sent to a well-deserved rest. Henry Ford II achieved his goal. The coupe entered history as one of the most successful racing cars of its time. It became a symbol of determination and the will to win. A total of 107 cars were produced, but this was not enough for collectors, and a real hunt for them began. Subsequently, many specialized companies produced GT40 replicas. And in 2005, the Ford GT coupes were created, which externally are practically a copy of the famous ancestor. This car has a 550 horsepower V8 and is purely road-going, although several Ford GTs have still been modified for racing. By the way, Ford does not forget its glorious past. At the start of Le Mans 2016, a completely new GT with a 3.5-liter 600 horsepower turbo engine appeared. The return was successful. Exactly on the eve of the 50th anniversary of the first victory, the Ford GT took first place in its class.